Welcome to Kathryn Raaker's World. Innovation, culture, adventure, fashion and health, artists, destinations, traditions. This is Kathryn Raaker's World.
Hi, this is Kathryn Raaker of Kathryn Raaker's World, and I'm very excited about bringing Dr. Brian L. Ackerman back to our show today. He did a radio show with us, and now we're doing TV. I still haven't got the book yet, but we will. And so I'm pretty excited about the book because it's got everything from pictures, charts, examples, and exercises, and it creates a healthier mindset. Am I right, Doc?
Absolutely does.
Right.
The nature of my work is a education about the human brain.
Right.
The human brain is the most fascinating organ that we have, and it behooves us all to learn more about it. It's one of the best ways to learn about ourselves.
Right. And you are not only an author, but a Harvard Medical School trained psychiatrist.
That's correct.
Involved in clinical psychiatry for over 50 years. You don't look that old.
It's the makeup.
It's a makeup, right? Good. Anyhow, I don't care how old anybody is, because if you love what you do, and it seems like you do, you always will look young, right? So,
Absolutely.
tell me, the last time we had you on, we talked about a lot of different things about people and how, like we talked about negativity, remember?
Correct.
And I have now got my two people that I'm working with. They're becoming positive, which is good. And they're actually physically doing something about it.
Fabulous.
Maybe I could go back to school. No, I don't want to become a psychiatrist. I got too many things other to do, right?
Well, I think, again, the best part of the brain for the human being is our unique capacity to learn.
Right.
So, and it's also interesting to think about how different parts of the brain really want different things. The part of the brain that I wrote about in the book that you've been learning about talks about the fight or flight part of the brain, which ironically is not a part that learns very well. So that part is not particularly educable. But the prefrontal cortex,
what part of the brain is that, Doc?
That part of the brain is the fight or flight part of the brain.
Where would that be in the brain?
That's I can show you best with I do a brain model.
A brain model.
And the fight or flight part of the brain, just from a visual point of view, is just above where the spinal cord enters into the cranial cavity.
Right there. Looks like a duck. Looks like the head of a duck right there. Is that right?
So yeah, all brains in mammals look the same.
Right.
So this part, which is about the size of the bottle cap.
Wow.
You can see that right there. It's very small, but it governs fight or flight, and the flight part is what makes people so anxious.
Really?
So who doesn't have, yes, and the fight part is what makes people aggressive. So who doesn't have too much anxiety and too much aggression? The whole species does.
Right.
So the notion that I generated that Mother Nature and God were kind of nervous Nellies, and they didn't know how much anxiety we would need and how much aggression we would need for our own survival throughout our life's journey, and decided, like they're packing a kid's lunch box, to put excess in. So when the kid opens the lunchbox and has 3 sandwiches, 3 apples, 4 cookies,
Gosh.
and says, why are you packing all this? I can't possibly eat all this. I didn't know. I didn't want you to be hungry. I didn't want you to go without would be the answer. So I decided I would pack excess is the notion, but I'm going to create a part of the brain, this part right here, the green part, which is really huge and is the most expanded part of the human brain.
Right.
And that's going to give you a capacity no other brain has ever had. And that is the capacity to realize that some of the things that you have are excessive. You don't need it all. And
Right.
then you can take steps on your own behalf, like
Pass it
you're
out to your
referring to.
friends, right? Pass it
Right.
out to your friends, right?
You can take steps to course correct.
Right.
So like you're deciding, do the French fries really need more salt? Probably not.
Yeah.
And how much salt do they need? Just a pinch. How much anxiety do we really need? Just a pinch. How much do we get? Suitcases full. How much aggression do we need? Just a pinch. How much do we get? Suitcases full. What do we do with the excess? We got to find a way to liberate ourselves from it. Otherwise, we, swim in it.
Right.
And
And
it's very
people would
uncomfortable.
be so aggressive they'd want to kill each other and stuff like that, correct?
Well, more uniquely for human beings, because all mammals have aggression. And throughout history and evolution, all the aggression is directed outwardly.
Mm-hmm.
But human beings are the first species who not only directs aggression outwardly, but against ourselves. So we're the first species who's ever gone, how could I be so stupid? And it starts there and goes all the way up to self-contempt and self-hatred.
Oh, wow.
What's more uniquely a problem, and even Freud, when he described depression, he described it, interesting enough, 100 years ago, as aggression turned against the self. And now we're seeing the connection between this part of the brain, this very small part, and the only part of the brain that's involved in aggression, and turning aggression not only outwardly, but against the self, and saying, how does that benefit our survival? Not much, and not at all, and perhaps even in the opposite. So people who, hurt themselves, physically injured themselves, and the analog of self-injury is sabotage. So there's people that, really need a job and they'll go into work drunk and they'll get fired.
Wow.
The consequence of the choices or decisions are the opposite. They're not operating in their best interest. So part of the point of brain education is that we got this fabulous brain, the best on the evolutionary market.
Right.
And it has within it the capacity to learn how to self-care and self-protect.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to do that, it has to make this curious realization that the brain also has impulses to self-injure.
Right.
And self-sabotage and self-dislike, all of which are not in its best interest.
Mm-hmm.
So the enemy that we have is truly not outside us, but is inside us.
Okay. Now, I have a question.
Sure.
Behind you is a beautiful poster of your book.
Yes.
Can you show me the book?
Again,
Again.
I was a Boy Scout, so I came prepared.
Okay. So my question is that a pill bottle?
It is a pill bottle
Lots
with
of
the
pills
person stuck inside it,
stuck inside
trying to
it.
get out.
Wow. So the point is that is it the point that we depend upon pills for cures?
In part, the part is that, human beings are dual natured. We have this incredible capacity to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
We got people figuring out how to land rocket ships on the moon.
Right.
We have incredible problem-solving abilities. The number of problems that have to be solved to accomplish that are enormous. And then there are sometimes we can't find our way out of a paper bag.
That's true.
We really right. So we're dual natured, and different parts of the brain generate the incredible problem solving ability and also the ability to get confused and stuck. And we can understand better by understanding the brain where we get hung up. It's a little bit like thinking about taking what traffic that you're in, and that when you get close to downtown, it's going to get bogged down because there's more traffic converging on a smaller area. And if you're trying to problem solve it, then you say, well, I don't really want to get bogged down in that traffic. Maybe I can leave earlier or leave later. But if I'm going to go right.
Or take a different route, doctor.
Yes, or take a different route. This is the part of the brain that has that ability to think things through and come up with a more optimal solution.
Right.
So the problem with substance use is that one part of the brain thinks, I feel terrible, I'm just going to grab something to help myself feel better. And it works for the moment, but it has terrible long-term consequences. The other part of the brain says, no, I really do care about the long-term consequences. If eating chocolate cake makes me feel better right this moment, but it undoes my diet, I don't want to do it. I need to make a decision that has a better result. Is there something else I can have right now that's not going to hurt me and help me accomplish my longer term goals? So part of the brain is devoted to long-term well-being. Another part of the brain is devoted to instant gratification, regardless of consequence.
Right.
We can see how they get into a tug of war, and ultimately everybody ends up of two minds about almost everything.
Well, let me ask this question. You can put your book down now. But my question is, you see so many people that are in anger management courses today because they take it out, like you said, if you're in a traffic situation or if you're in something else.
Yes.
I suggest you get out of their way totally, because you don't want to be in an accident with them.
Absolutely.
And I've seen the other thing that really just tears me apart is when you see somebody that is on their phone, putting makeup on and driving at the same time.
Yes.
And you really want to write their number down and call the cops because somebody's going to get hurt, you think.
Right. So I was looking around in my office because I have developed a bumper sticker.
Bumper sticker?
That has the icon of me pointing to the brain. And next to it, it says, honk gently if you're aware of your amygdala. The point being is that we live in this environment, and one of the benefits of brain education is we not only learn about ourselves and our aggressive amygdalas, which is not us, but which is in us, but we also understand that every other human being has an amygdala too, which means that they're vulnerable to becoming very aggressive. And we're learning to identify that's their brain part that's operating. And when we're in that way and we want to respond rage with rage, and we often do, then we're saying, well, that's really just going to escalate and be of no benefit.
So what does it mean again?
So the amygdala is the fight or flight part of the brain.
Right.
And I think what I was describing on the radio show is a kind of an interesting way to remember it. So a way of thinking about the amygdala is a anecdote that I can describe that happened a couple months ago. My wife is walking back from the mailbox, and she's brushed back by what turns out to be a gigantic hawk, who it turns out is making a beeline for the grass. And she hears a squelching, a squealing, and she thinks the hawk gets hurt in its nosedive and calls animal rescue. And it turns out it was the rabbit that was in trouble,
Oh.
and the hawk was making off with the rabbit in its talons. And what I said to her is that what we're looking at in the hawk is the bird's amygdala. The aggression in that attack is really the same part of the brain that human beings have. Now, I'll show you one other book just so that we sort of keep what we're talking about here. This is the human amygdala now we're talking about. That in the bird, we're looking at the bird's amygdala, and that its aggressiveness and viciousness is really what's of note, is designed to help keep it alive, to get food for its own survival.
Wow.
It has to be that vicious in order to survive.
Right.
But now when we look to the human amygdala and we say, do we need that viciousness in order to survive? We don't. And secondly, our amygdala has the variation in it is that it not only directs aggression outwardly, but against ourselves. And there's zero benefit to hating oneself. There's zero benefit to self-harming oneself. There's even zero benefit to the seemingly mild, how could I be so stupid? All the negative thinking that we're flooded with. And the point about that is that every human being does it. And they do it by virtue of having this magnificent brain. So the magnificent brain isn't brought to you because it's flooded with negative thinking. The magnificent brain is brought to you because it can be aware of the negative thinking. And it can be aware of its counterproductivity. It can be aware simultaneously of all the fabulous features of the brain. And it also can be aware of what I jokingly refer to as the Rhode Island pothole. The things you got to watch out for, not only out there, the drivers out there, but the pothole in your own brain that generates counterproductive thoughts, inaccurate conclusions, feelings that are also counterproductive and inaccurate. Once we have and develop and strengthen this ability to sort what's useful from what's counterproductive, now we're back in the driver's seat.
Right. So with these people that we're going to use them as examples, we're not saying who they are. These people, when do you see, I think they start seeing the light. If they, and I don't even let them get to the second sentence anymore. I say,
Right.
And I brought the price down a little bit, by the way. I brought it down to 5 cents, but that's all right. And as soon as I hear this, I go, oh, 5 cents. Negative thought. Oh, no. And I say, you realized it, didn't you? Is it because of the money or what? Is that the brain telling them it's going to cost me to do this?
Well, what's creative about the use of incentive there, because it makes it more into a kind of a game to try to incentivize us to think a little bit more carefully and constructively.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of the brain that runs simply by reward and simple rewards is the lower part of the brain, but it's a very potent part of the brain.
Right.
But there are lower rewards and there are higher rewards. So, for example, I was working with someone in one of the substance hospitals that I work with, and he had a combination of diagnosis of bipolar disorder and a lot of substance use. And he said that as a kid, he used to hurt himself, he used to punch himself, and he used to cut himself. And he said he used to get a lot of pleasure and satisfaction out of that injury.
Really?
Now, I do a lot of clinical work with usually teenagers that self-injure. They cut themselves, they burn themselves, and they're often feeling a sense of a void and emptiness. And oddly enough, when they cut themselves, they feel like they're alive. It has this paradoxical effect of reminding them that they're alive, and then they start doing it as a habit. But the analogy that I gave him was that, you know, when I watch the Olympics and I watch the people that really look feel fully satisfied and content, it is the ones that stick the landing and they don't get hurt. And they feel triumphant in their accomplishment. And I said, if you only stop with feeling some momentary pleasure, then you've missed the whole level of the capacity for tremendous contentment. And those are driven by different parts of the brain. Why go for a temporary pleasure, which actually ends up hurting yourself, when you could go for genuine contentment? And what we also go after in meditation and mindfulness is genuine well-being. Now, the interesting thing is we look about that, again, looking at from the brain point of view, is that when we're feeling discomfort, anxiety, agitation, depression, irritability, it's only a small part of the brain that feels that. The rest of the brain doesn't feel that at all. And this part of the brain is actually, while we're simultaneously feeling terrible, is feeling wonderful. And it's calling out to us and says, look, you're in the damp, dark basement of your brain. Why don't you come up to the living room? We have fresh air, 60-inch TV screen, comfortable chairs to sit in. Why are you hanging out in the basement?
Right.
There's another part of your brain to inhabit. So mindfulness training goes from learning about the brain and the different real estate parts of it, and teaches us that we can actually learn to inhabit the best parts of the brain on a more willful, determined, conscious basis.
Well, that sounds exciting, and I'm going to keep you up on some of the things that I'm working on right now. Because I think it's important for people to get excited. These are creative people. This is what I don't get. Sometimes even creative DIYers. It doesn't matter what the craft or what the artwork or what the literature, whatever it is. We tend.
I thought about that is that, and this would be a circled around way of explaining this, is the best answer I heard to the question, is the glass half empty or half full, is that it's both.
That's true.
And the best way of thinking about, are people smart or are they not smart, is that they're both. And the reason, because they're not one or the other, it is that we have a really intelligent part of our brain. It has capacity for intelligent reasoning. It has capacity for creative imagining. And when you meet someone and you're utterly impressed by those features, we tend to define them by that. But they also have another part of the brain that is not particularly smart. It just doesn't have the capacity. And depending on which part of the brain is dominating, they are either one or the other. So when I ask people, do you think you're smart or not smart? The true answer to that, is the glass half empty or half full, is that you're both.
That's right.
And then it is, well, which do you want to be more of? And then you say, well, of course I want to be, invoking the smarter part of my brain. How do I do that? Because, but part of it is that I can do that more successfully and more optimally when I'm aware is I have a not smart part of my brain too.
Right.
And I don't want to identify myself with that part, but just that I want to recognize that I have that. So I want to make sure I don't use it. It's like a gun owner making sure that the gun is locked up because they realize that it could be a problem if not used safely. You got to make sure that the ammo for the gun is locked up because of the potential danger of the weapon. And when you look at the amygdala as potentially a problematic part of our own mentation that can get us into all sorts of trouble because it really doesn't want to think things through.
That's true. We've run out of time, Doc.
Go figure.
We always have so much fun when we're together. And I'll tell you what, I've really learned a lot. Thank you so very much. And now I can go on and be a champion with these people, now that I know it. And the funny part about it is the one person is now getting out more, which I'm very happy about. I've given him some challenges to do, and he has to report back. He has like a little report card every day when I call him, and he gets a star, but it works. Whatever it takes to make it work with this person, I want him to be happy and proud of himself. So now he's getting out, which is good. He needs to do that.
Well, I also think it's very helpful that you can be his champion. And eventually you want to teach him how to empower his prefrontal cortex to become his internal champion.
Right.
So that he can, in effect, channel you when he's kind of feeling challenged.
Usually
But
call
also,
when he's being challenged. I get a phone call.
Yeah, right. But the notion is that one way to think about the prefrontal cortex, it's like having a coach. It's like having a coach on The Voice that recognizes your talent and capabilities and is just there to work with you to bring that to the fore. Share it with the world.
I will. And by the way, where can people purchase your book? And we're going to put this everywhere on all of our stations and yournews.com, which is a really important place to put it, right? And we'll send that to you. So where do we go?
It's on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And as a reminder that by the end of this year, there's 2 other books that are forthcoming.
2 other books. We definitely have to talk to you about those, right? Right. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful weekend.
My pleasure.
A happy time. It looks like it's sun shining there. So get out, feel the sunshine, right? Thank you.
I love the sunshine. Thank you.
I can see you. Thank you. And don't forget to go to KathrynRaakersWorld.com and yournews.com and letsjusttalk.com. Thank you so much for joining me. Have a happy weekend. Thank you, Doc.